focused on building and operating a world police force, as it is the case already for a long time. But that will not be enough, and, in the guise of a so-called peaceful globalization, American politics will aspire to gain absolute control of the world concerning supremacy in economy. And this will point towards the possibility that a third world war could develop from it, if human beings as a whole will not finally reflect upon reason, become reasonable and undertake the necessary steps against the insane machinations of their governments and military powers as well as their secret services, and call a halt to the power of the irresponsible who have forsaken their responsibility in all areas. If this does not happen, many small and great nations will lose their independence and their cultural identity and will be beaten down, because the USA will gain predominance over them and with evil force bring them down under her rule. At first, many countries will howl with the wolves of the US, partially due to fear of American aggressions and sanctions, as will be the case with many irresponsible ones in Switzerland and Germany, but also of other countries. In part, others will join in because they will be forced somehow to do so or will be misled by irresponsible promoters of American propaganda. Finally, many Asian, African and European states will rise up against the American hegemony, once they recognize that the United States of America is only taking advantage of them for purposes of war, conquest and exploitation. In this way, many countries will become puppet states of America before reason and realization will emerge in the responsible ones of governments and in many of the population, resulting in a turning away from the USA. However, the Great War will hardly be avoidable because the human beings of Earth will probably not accept the directions towards the better, therewith towards true love, true freedom and real peace, striving instead only towards wealth, pleasure and riches and for all manner of material values and unrestricted power. Thus, huge and deadly formations of tanks will roll across the countries while fighter planes and rockets sweep through the air and bring death, ruin, destruction and annihilation to countries and people. And the bad time will come, during which also the militaries and armies will cause out of control, great, vile and evil devastations and unimaginable massacres of the people, who will be forced to watch the wild activities powerlessly. Your and our warnings will be cast into the wind by the majority of Earth humanity, even though quite a bit could still be saved and the very worst could be prevented if your and our words of love, peace, freedom, and wisdom would be acted upon. But even that, unfortunately, is doubtful. If the Third World War will actually happen as calculations and observations appear to indicate to be probable now and also during the approaching few decades, then, as now, the civilian population will above all have to bear the brunt of the enormous suffering in tremendous numbers in this entire catastrophe and, last but not least, the fault of the irresponsible scientists who by cloning will create human machines for military purposes, devoid of conscience and feelings, and will create immensely deadly and all-annihilating computer-like weapons. At the same time, the danger could become reality that the human combat machines, the military clones, will gain their independence and under their own management will bring death, devastation, destruction and annihilation to the human beings of Earth and to the planet. The entire planet will become an arena of unparalleled suffering, which will never have existed before on Earth up to that time. The cruel happenings will last about 888 days and cause civilization to collapse. Yet, the terrible scenario will continue, and epidemics and various diseases as well as enormous famine will be spread among the people, while the economy of the world will totally collapse and there will be no possibility to produce any goods. Needless to say, all foods and medications, etc. will be rationed, and anyone who lays their hands on these goods will be put to death. The insanity of war will extend not only across the land, but the disaster will equally be spread to the oceans, into the atmosphere, even into outer space. But there will also be settlements under the ocean that will be developed in the course of the future, and these will be attacked and destroyed, claiming the lives of many thousands of people. However, a certain maelstrom of destruction will also originate from the undersea facilities, because in the cities at the bottom of the ocean, groups of submarine pirates will be formed which will burst upwards from the depths of the ocean and will become involved in destructive actions of combat with naval units on the surface. And at this time, the possibility could become reality that extraterrestrial forces intervene against the Western industrialized countries, because these will be responsible for the extreme and enormous disaster of the coming evil times. These extraterrestrial forces will give up their anonymity and their state of secrecy and will assist those who are being terrorized by the irresponsibly acting Western countries, should this possibility become reality. In addition, apocalyptic natural catastrophes will occur which will cause all of Europe to shake and tremble, but Europe will continue to exist, even after having suffered enormous destruction. Far in the West, it will be different. The United States of America will be a country of total destruction. The cause for this will be manifold. With her global conflicts which are continuously instigated by her and which will continue far into the future, America is creating enormous hatred against her, worldwide, in many countries. As a result, America will experience enormous catastrophes which will reach proportions barely imaginable to people of Earth. The destruction of the WTC, that is, the World Trade Center, by terrorists will only be the beginning. Yet all the apocalyptic events will not only be brought about due to the use of unbelievably deadly and destructive weapons such as chemical, laser and others, and by cloned murder machines, but in addition to this, the earth and nature, maltreated to the deepest depths by the irresponsible human beings of Earth, will rise up and cause destruction and bring death onto the earth. Enormous firestorms and gigantic hurricanes will sweep over the USA and bring devastation, destruction and annihilation, as this from time immemorial never before will have happened. Not only will America, but also all other Western industrial countries which still live at the beginning of the new millennium in the delusion that they could dominate and rule over underdeveloped nations, that is, third world countries, will not only soon lose influence over these but must defend themselves against them. According to the prophecies of Henoch, the truth about industrialized countries is that they only seem to appear to be true civilizations, but in fact they are not, because more and more, at the end of the 20th century and at the beginning of the third millennium, they will disregard all true love, true freedom and true wisdom as well as true peace, along with all values of humaneness and all values of men's and women's true being. But not even all the terrible happenings will hinder the USA in continuing to proceed with her actions against all countries. Even when the North American continent will be stricken by the most terrible catastrophe which has ever been recorded, evil military powers will wreak havoc with computerized and nuclear, biological and chemical weapons, whereby it will also happen that computerized weapons become independent and cannot be controlled any longer by human beings. Overall, this is the most important part of Henoch's prophecies. Billy says, but there is still more to explain, if I may ask you for it. At least, that is what you told me. Quetzal says you are untiring, so I will point out a few more important facts of the prophecies. As of now, new epidemics have spread among the people of Earth. However, as Henoch prophesied, quite a number of further epidemics will follow. Not only AIDS will occur worldwide in the 1990s, but also epidemics such as the so-called mad cow disease, that is, BSE, out of which different strains of Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome will develop, lasting well into the new millennium. Also, an epidemic known as Ebola will cause many deaths, as well as other unknown epidemics and diseases which will sporadically arise in epidemic proportions and will be new to the human being, causing great concern. However, most of the evil will be brought about by politics. France and Spain become involved with each other in armed conflicts, and even before World War III will have broken out. Yet France will not only engage in armed conflicts with Spain, for within her great unrests will arise, leading to upheavals and civil war, as will be the case in Russia and Sweden. Especially in France and Sweden, machinations as well as dictatorial regulations of the European Union will cause much unrest and many uprisings, but also crimes committed by gangs and organized crime.